Hi, everyone. I am here to introduce you to my colleague and best friend, Kristy Cohen. She is a Jyotish astrologer like me, and we are promoting our Vedic astrology, Introduction to Vedic Astrology webinar, 8-week webinar starting this summer. And I thought we'd give you a chance to get to know who we are and what compelled us to learn Vedic astrology and why it actually has helped us in our life on a daily basis. And we want to give you kind of an overview of our history and who we studied with and sort of a broad stroke of what the class will be about. So Kristy, welcome. And I'm really excited to teach this with you again. And I would love to ask you and share with the audience, what compelled you to study Vedic astrology and when? When did you start?
I started back in probably 1999 or 2000. I had just gotten my Hatha Yoga certification in 98, and through studying a little bit of the Vedas and the Sutras, came across Jyotish. And that really sparked my interest. I thought, wow, this, yoga is so amazing. I'm sure the astrology has to be just as amazing, and it's steeped in scripture. So I was really drawn to the ancient lineage and the structure it provides.
No, yoga was a segue. That's how you actually learned about it, was through, she's an amazing yoga teacher, by the way. And I can understand that. So yoga was your passion. And then, one of the limbs of the Veda, which is yoga, is also Jyotish. So what compelled you to study that? You just all of a sudden felt like, well, if I love yoga this much, then Vedic astrology should be just as cool.
I had discovered astrology before yoga, but Western astrology, but it was just really sort of, an interest in picking up a book here and there, but not really ever officially studying it with a teacher. So fast forward to my first teacher, really, what was actually Sam Jeppy in an online course through a website and a guru called Astrology. So I took a beginner's course. I studied with Sam, and then that led me to study with our teacher, Penny, who teaches in the Heart to Foe lineage, and that's how we met.
Cool. So you studied with Sam. I knew that about you, and I just forgot it was so far away. It was 1999 with Sam?
No, that was in, I think, the year 2010. So from 99 till 2010, I was doing other things, teaching elementary school, teaching Hatha Yoga, teaching kids yoga, and also just picking up a Jyotish, astrology book whenever possible and thinking, I can't read this, I can't understand this. And then eventually landed in up in Sam's course, and then continued my studies more seriously from 2010 until now. And I continue to study. But I did study with Penny for about 7 years, and she was a fantastic teacher, very structured. And of course, that led to many trips up the ashram again, and that's how we met. And I'm wondering, how long were you studying with Penny before I met you?
I started studying at that ashram in Saylorsburg, Pennsylvania, called Ayurvedic ashram. That's where Kristy and I met in one of Penny's classes, and that was 2015. And I wanted to study the classic Jyotish, the classic Vedic astrology, because I was studying Jaimini, which was like a form of Jaimini that was based on revolutionary Ayurveda. And so it's a medical form of Vedic astrology, very much like Jaimini, it's a form of it. And it was with the teacher Gandharva Sauls. And that was in my 30s. And he and I used to work together when I saw my Ayurvedic clients. So I decided, I wanted to study something a little more classic, because I had studied the classic Ayurveda with Dr. Ladd, and Gandharva was not, he was sort of off-Broadway, but very interesting, very accurate. And it gave me a really good foundation of the planets and the whole cosmology. And then I studied another offbeat, kind of off-Broadway Jyotish, which was systems approach by Yeah, that was really fascinating. I still love it, and I still want to immerse myself in that because there's some truth in that system. David Hawthorne was in,
Right.
yeah, he's an incredible teacher. He's an incredible Vedic astrologer. His knowledge is just incredible. I'm sure Penny wouldn't agree with half of it, but she knows about systems approach, and that has taught me a lot. So since I loved it so much, I thought, okay, so I'm kind of close to mainstream astrology. I studied two offbeat, sort of off-Broadway forms. And then after years of studying with David in Fairfield, Iowa, because I went to the Maharishi University and they weren't teaching classic Jyotish at that point. They are now, but only David was teaching anywhere near it. So then David and I no longer lived in Fairfield, and I tried to stay in touch. It wasn't easy, so I wanted something local this time, and that's when I went to the ashram in 2015, and I met you, I think, in 2016. But I had seen you, and think I had seen you in 2015, and we hadn't really introduced each other. It was about a year later that we met, and I studied with Penny in a less classic way, more like she called me the fly on the wall student, because I was coming and going, and anyway, she let me study with her because she was a fan of Dr. Ladd, and she knew I'd had that experience, and I couldn't commit because I was running an Ayurvedic school and I was busy, and I just couldn't give her 100%. So she let me be fly on the wall, but still fly on the wall. I was in that class so often and so many times, and absolutely loved her teaching method. Was so structured, and she was brilliant herself. I'm just absolutely Ivy League.
Well, one thing I love about co-teaching with you is your vast knowledge of Ayurveda and how you blend that into the astrology. So I've sort of got the Hatha yoga side of it. You've got the Ayurvedic side of it, and we both have the Jyotish. So it's always a lot of fun. And I feel like I always learn something when I work with you. And
me too.
It's amazing to blend these sister sciences. I mean, they remain two of my passions in life, both Hatha yoga and Jyotish. And I'm thankful, so grateful that they're in my life.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
So tell me what it is that on a daily basis has served you with this, knowing this beautiful knowledge. Like for example, give me the most recent planetary transit that you've used in your life to make your life be a little smoother, or understand your karmas a little better, or just to get through the whole thing. What is, on a practical level, how's it served you?
I think in terms of timing and planning, knowing the transits that are happening up in the sky and how they're relating to your own birth chart, that awareness alone is very helpful, because you sort of get here's what's coming. And you also have you have that foresight, and you can sort of align and attune. That's the two words that I always use. And you try to first be aware of the energies that are present, and then you want to try to use that in the highest or best expression possible, because there's always a spectrum. So something that recently happened to me was I had Jupiter aspecting my natal Mars, and transiting Jupiter aspecting natal Mars, and then transiting Mars aspecting my natal Jupiter. So I always tend to get into some kind of, political fight or cause, some sort of injustice, which absolutely happened. And, even though I felt like, just for different reasons, even though I had the foresight that it was coming, I did get a little gripped by it, let's say that, and involved, when you're like really involved and you're emotionally invested. But, it allowed me still to pull back and have a higher perspective, know when it was going to, end, as well as also key. So you can be prepared, you can see it coming. Sometimes you don't know, oh, that's exactly how that'll express, but at least you know what the energies are. And it's just a good self-check, I think, an opportunity, for growth and awareness, how you're reacting to your world.
Yeah. So I've noticed that, I buy into the drama still. I hope, I hope
That's
that
just a
sometimes
try.
that I, can rise above the drama with all the knowledge I have and you have, but often we become victims of the drama, and like you said, gripped by the planets, because literally the word planet in Sanskrit is graha, meaning grip. So they do grip us, and even with this knowledge, sometimes we are taken off guard. But the good news is we kind of have a heads up on some broad stroke level, as well as once we are in it and we're gripped by it, we can actually know when it's going to pass and why it's happened. This gives you the ability to stay in that witness state, the spectator, and not so caught up in all the illusion of the drama. So give me an example of the Mars transit. You said it was Jupiter, which represents your children, and then Mars is what in your 6th house, which is enemies and litigation and standing up for what is right and all of that. Tell me what happened to you in this. Mars just went into Cancer, like 5-6 days ago, or it's debilitated there.
Yeah. So Mars, transiting Mars in Cancer was exactly on my natal Mars. And then that was throwing in a really tight aspect to Jupiter, a square aspect, which is a special aspect that Mars gives. So I got upset because we just had softball season just ended, and pretty much throughout the entire season, we realized as parents that our girls, the softball team, did not have a coach that really knew what she was doing. And it led to just feeling like, our daughters were not served and that our school district could do better. So first, it sort of culminated at this game where I just got really emotionally triggered. Other parents were shooting off, and then I went to the athletic director who was at the last game, said something, and he was sort of like, it's not appropriate to speak about this right now, write me a letter. So then over the last couple of days, actually, then Mars moved over my Mercury ruling communications, writing letters, et cetera. And then I went into a frenzy of writing letters, to prove this injustice and that we have to do better and that we have to try to hire people that, have skills and knowledge about the game that they're coaching.
Right.
So
that's what the Mars transit did. This recent Mars transit, it ignited your your vision and seeing an injustice around.
Yeah, and also, right. It was like I had to fight the fight, and it was a good fight. It was a Jupiterian fight. I had to right the wrong. And that's how Mars got me this time around. But I was also able to just, look at the transit and know, okay, this is what's coming up. This is how I can deal with this with grace, because Mars is not so much a graceful planet. You can get really
feisty
and argue and want to fight. So, you do your best. And with this awareness, you keep telling yourself, and then of course, all of your astrological friends are there to support you and tell you what's going on, because, in some ways it's hard to read your own chart and really keep a step ahead.
It is. So what are you going to do about this Mars transit regarding the issue with a soccer coach and all this writing, and knowing that Mars leaves its debilitation sign of Cancer on June 30th? How do you foresee this playing out for you? Do you feel you'll get a good result from the letters, or do you feel?
So I feel like it's already sort of on its way out, because I'll take a tight orb the whole time that Mars is in Cancer. Once, the applying aspect to it seems to give a little more of the action, the build up, the action. And then once it passes over the degree of any natal planet that you have, then you start to, the energy wanes. So the energy is now waning. I did actually have, I wrote 2 different letters, one to the superintendent, one to the athletic director. I stated my case. I asked how I could be of help. Could I join a hiring committee? What can I do to help? In other words, which is my way of, trying to handle it with grace. And so I did get a good response, and I felt like it was a success.
Good.
I still have not heard back from the superintendent, but I believe that I will. And I think it will be good. So it's just, it's an education.
Good. So the thick of it, when you really got caught up and you were so derailed, was when you were in a tight orb and you could see that was going to fade. So you could say to yourself, oh my God, I can do this. I can get through it until it starts to fade away from the tight orb that it was gripping me at. And that gave you
Yes.
hope. I'm guessing that gave you a reprieve, that you could get through this. And it wasn't just like you were a victim. It was random and you're not blindsided by it. You kind of knew something like this was coming and when it would be the thickest and when it would start to wane. You kind of had that all in perspective. Even though you still got gripped by it, you were able to transcend it and still be in a state of grace, which is what knowledge does. It empowers us. So would you agree to that?
Absolutely. And yeah, 100%.
Good. Okay, so that's what I wanted to know.
I think out of that, like another benefit is self-awareness and personal growth. Like if you know your astrology chart and you study your chart, you're studying yourself. Yeah. But astrology is definitely going to provide that insight of our individual strengths and challenges and life patterns. So here's an example in my chart of that Mars Jupiter blueprint energy getting affected by that transit, but really bringing up like something that is within me, something that, triggered sort of my blueprint and a reaction that I have to life in general in some sense.
Yeah, so you knew yourself already, and then the transits, it's once you get to know your natal chart, it's okay, this part of my life is maybe not the biggest tire on my bus of life. Maybe, the biggest tire on my bus of life might be Saturn and my ability to teach yoga and to be a good mom and all those things. And maybe say if your flat tire on your bus of life might be, what I mean? We all have a flat tire somewhere. So we kind of get to know what are our gifts, what are our challenges just from our natal blueprint. And then when the transits occur, like the current planets that move in their own timing, how they impact our natal chart, that is where we really get empowered to live in the moment, watching the cosmos and how it is unfolding and impacting us. And I hope I said that right to you. Would you agree?
Absolutely. So
okay,
I'm wondering, something came to mind, but it left. But I'm wondering, what about you? Have you had any like recent transit that really stood out, as significant, I guess, because not every transit will be significant. That's the other thing.
Right.
But in this case where I had Jupiter opposite my Jupiter and my natal Jupiter, and then Mars aspecting, like the Mars-Jupiter connection there.
Yeah, well, that was big. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then you look, right. And then going back to what you're saying about the blueprint is, that's a tough energy with Mars in Cancer, right? Wanting to protect your children at a square aspect to Jupiter in Libra, and sort of like society out there in the world, righting a wrong, justice, justice. So I have to watch out for that. And it's really interesting because upon reflection, I was sort of like counting how many times I've done this for my children.
Interesting.
or for the sake of children, or for the sake of education, or, fifth house matters. Like I will go with that.
Yeah, I've seen you over the years.
I've done it with the Little League. I've done it with, this is why I got kicked out of schools and I could no longer teach. So.
Oh my God, well, you're a trailblazer. You're, there to break down paradigms or outdated rules. You're just not going to sit there and tolerate it. So yeah, sometimes those people are the movers and shakers of society, and they aren't always welcome in complacent sort of structures because you're not a complacent kind of girl. You see the bigger picture and you want to make a change. So that would have been tough. Yeah.
I felt like it was my dharma just to put it out there. I have to write this letter and now it's over. And that's another part of Mars, I think energy is doing that action and then letting go.
Yes.
So.
And it might have been impactful for you because you're in between Mars ruler and Jupiter ruler of your entire chart. So we don't know if it's Mars or Jupiter, but those are the two potential rulers of your chart, and they're transiting and they're doing the same thing that they've done in the past, repeating patterns around children and injustice. It just happens to be that these possible 9 planets, Rahu, Ketu included, those are the 2 that were transiting and really impacting you, and it happened to be around an eclipse, which just intensifies things.
And not only that, but I was thinking about that as well. And it's, that eclipse, all that Aries energy with so many planets there, Mars is caught up in this eclipse. So I think that everyone should be looking at their Mars to see
everyone should be, yeah,
connection to, because I mean, the eclipse happens, but Mars, all the planets keep moving. So then timing just unfolds. It's never a clean slate. There's always cycles upon cycles. And I'm like literally going back in my mind thinking how many fights I've been in over like being a mother tiger and overdoing it because Mars is in Cancer where it's not comfortable.
In your natal chart.
Yeah. So anyhow, self-awareness, personal growth, timing, planning, knowing also the timing. If you want to talk about dasha, I mean, that's helpful to know which planetary period you're running and how is that planet, how is it activated in your chart? What is it ruling? What's its dignity? What are the transits? All of those things can really be helpful to give you direction.
Yeah, there's going to be 3 major things we're going to look at in these 8 weeks, and that's the natal chart, the dasha, which is a Sanskrit word meaning cycle. So there are dasha cycles within everyone's personal chart that are planetary, and they all have their own lifespan. So, for example, Rahu is 18 years, and I don't know what
Jupiter is 16.
Jupiter is 16 years, and what'd you say? Yeah,
18.
Yeah. So anyway, so there's a certain amount of years that you may be in, and that house, wherever that planet is, will be ignited. And that's important to know, as well as the current transits that are affecting the whole collective, not just your individual chart. So for example, like Mars is transiting the sign of Cancer right now, and it opened it like maybe 5 days ago, and it won't leave Cancer until June 30th. So knowing that, and then knowing your dasha cycle is your internal cycle, and then knowing your own natal chart. These are the 3 things we're going to be looking at in the 8-week program together, and getting to know who we are, self-discovery, learning our Ayurvedic constitution, which way we go out of balance. Do we go out of balance with swelling, adipose tissue, or do we get dehydrated? Does our nervous system get shot? Which one is, your weak spot? Say your nervous system, yeah.
And dehydration.
And dehydration.
I think one last benefit to learning astrology, Jyotish, I should say, Vedic astrology, the astrology that uses the sidereal zodiac, is that it helps you understand people and how you relate to people. And ultimately that always brings more compassion and I think lovingness around your relationships.
Brilliant. I have to say, that's the most important thing for me that I didn't even expect. I wanted to study astrology for to embellish on my Ayurveda, so I could read people through the chart instead of having to feel their pulse or do the whole questionnaire and try to figure out what attribute is out of balance with them, which dosha. And, that was like a lot of guesswork and highly intuitive work when you're using pulse analysis. So if you add pulse analysis and you add intuition and questioning, which they call prashna, and Vedic astrology, you can really see what's going on physically, mentally, emotionally with the person. The whole gamut of Ayurveda is exposed right through the chart. So that was my main impetus. And then secondly, I wanted to do some self-exploration. I wanted to understand why I was having so much trouble finding a husband, getting married, and the whole dating world was freaking me right out. And I knew there was something wrong because nobody else was going through what I was going through. I was going through it in a major way. Every single relationship was like a sociopath. I was a magnet, and I knew that there had to be some mathematical explanation. Yes, I wanted to see, like, on paper, in writing, why was this happening to me and how could I navigate it so that I could use my discernment to know who to date and who not to date, and when would I find love, and when the weakest part of my chart is on the 9th house where Mars and Venus sit, the passion planets for love, right? So because Ketu is in that mix. And anyways, I wanted to understand logically, and also it would give me reprieve from feeling like a victim, like feeling like poor me. Didn't want to be that victim girl that was just a, waiting, sitting duck in the middle of the road for the next sociopath. I wanted to take my power back, transcend it, and understand it. Maybe I couldn't change it, but at least I could understand why it was happening to me. So I didn't walk around like a poor me. I wanted to walk around empowered, even though this was happening. So that's why I studied it after I was, loving it with the Ayurveda and the health and all that, medical astrology. I wanted to go into my personal, the conundrum that I had, that weak spot. And then I found out so much more than I ever imagined. I saw my mother, I saw my father, I saw my daughter. And in the chart, you can see your whole family. You can see your friends. You can see everything, basically. So that moon is mother. That sun is father. And I had a horrible relationship with my father. Love him very much, but he was not the storybook father. Trust me. And when I saw him in the 8th house in my chart, in my natal chart, I was born with an afflicted father. I was born with karma around father. Then I understood, okay, it's not me. I can not personalize it. I'm not a victim. And I could forgive myself and forgive him because I saw it was in writing. It was like fate.
It gives you a higher perspective.
Yeah. It gave me more understanding around why he does these things. He's just such a strange father. And now I can forgive him more easily. I understand I chose him and I needed to reparent myself and step out of all that. And now my soul contract with him is probably over at this point. I'm 60 this year. So I think I learned my lessons and walked through the fire with my father, and the same situation with my mother. And, I don't want to give too much away, but I had a very tough affliction with my moon, very challenged moon in my chart. So my moon is one of my flatter tires on my bus of life, even though it's big, beautiful, bright moon near full, 2 days from being full. It's still not a planet that serves me or supports me in any way. It's where I had to learn my hardest lessons. I have the mother wound in my chart and the father wound in my chart. So it's genetic and it goes back. It's like soul genealogy. You can see my mother's mother and my father's father. And so I wanted to stop the pain and stop this repeating cycle, get off the wheel of karma that keeps spinning like a hamster. I wanted to forgive everybody, have the whole lineage, lit up and forgive.
Well, this now brings us to remedial measures, which is yet another benefit of studying Jyotish.
Yeah, so I learned to actually forgive my mother and forgive my father. And when I did that, I strengthened my sun and my moon in my chart. And I did also, beyond forgiveness, which is a remedial measure, I use the Ho'oponopono novena for forgiveness, but I also did service to mother-like figures, and I was extra loving and kind to my mother. When I looked at the chart, I could understand why she did that because I looked at her chart and I understood her narrative, like why she did this. Like, wow, well, that explains it. And then I had to not, how could I hold that against her? She couldn't help it. That's the way she thinks. And it's not to give people an excuse or a cop out. It's to really understand people's nature, and then takes away all the blame and the shame. And then I could notice every time I did something nice for my mom, like I would buy her a gift or call her when she really needed me, or I do Reiki sessions on her remotely because she lives, an hour and a half, so I can't always get there. So I would do remote healings. I noticed that my moon in my chart would support me a lot more when I was kind to my mother. And same thing with my father. I had given my father and my mother a sort of proverbial funeral, didn't talk to them for 6 years each, in different time frames. And during those times, I went back in retrospect and I saw the trouble with my sun and my moon. Much more, I would say I had more afflictions and less luck in those areas of my life during the time that I cut my parents out. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't cut your parents out, because there are some parents that are so toxic, you need to walk away with love. So permission to do that. But if you can forgive them, if you can rise above it, it will literally serve you, and you will find liberation somehow in it. And this is why astrology has served me. This is why I feel I don't think I could live my life without astrology ever, because once you have the knowing, you can't go back.
And I think that each planet represents karma and represents a lesson that we can learn in this lifetime. And so to make that effort, you know, you will, I feel, be rewarded with like some wisdom or some grace somehow.
I think so too. So we're going to teach that, all the remedial measures for each planet. So we find an affliction or an unfavorable house, or, you know, a flat tire on your bus of life, anywhere, we can give you remedial measures for that to help you. So it's not like we're going to read your chart and say, oh, you're doomed. Sorry, good luck. No, it's okay. Here's where the light comes through the wound. This is where you'll learn your biggest lessons and have the opportunity to transcend them and become enlightened. And here are some things you can do to actually expedite this and bless your whole life. And you can start loving yourself, forgiving your family members and all the people that hurt you. And that is, to me, the ultimate state of grace, is in total forgiveness and understanding. We can't ever dismiss that word, because when you understand something, you can literally file it and be liberated from it.
And you're understanding yourself ultimately. And that is why studying it yourself is the greatest way to go about it, rather than.
It is. And I'll just give you a brief rundown on the Mars transit for me.
Okay.
Just what happened 6 days ago was my mom started getting tachycardia and have to go on a heart monitor. And so her heart, she had myocarditis and symptoms of it. She was in the hospital for 5 days during the very beginning of the Mars in Cancer transit, which debilitates that planet. And her chart, in her natal chart, her fourth house, which governs the heart, it's the fourth chakra, is owned by Mars. So that house got weak for her and her heart gave out, right? And the eclipse also.
What sign is that? Aries for her on her fourth
Aries.
house?
Yeah, she has Saturn in Aries in the fourth house, who debilitated Saturn in that house. And then Mars went debilitated on top of the natal debilitation. In transit, Mars went debilitated, and the natal debilitation, Saturn, isn't helping at all. So that started literally symptoms during the eclipse, because her lunar star got eclipsed right to the exact degree of the eclipse.
Right?
Yeah, Swati, that lunar star. And then when Mars went, I knew when Mars was going to debilitate, she was going to be in trouble, because she was already showing signs of trouble because of the eclipse. The eclipse happened on May 5th, the lunar.
Also, in your chart, you have Cancer in your fourth house, which represents mother. And
that's what I was going to say.
Yes. Just gone into.
You see it, you see the whole picture. So using my mom's chart, we can see the Mars transit for her affected her, but it affected me. So I see my mother's illness through my chart, which is so cool. So my fourth house is owned by the moon, which I told everybody, moon is mother. So if my fourth house is owned by moon, and Cancer owns my fourth house, which landlord is moon. So when Mars transited Cancer, my fourth house, it affected my mother. And I knew it would. So that's not so good. And it affected me deeply, because Mars is the Lord of my chart. And then my daughter, so we can see the whole family in the natal charts. It's so cool. So my daughter is the opposite of me, right? She's Libra ascendant. So I'm Aries ascendant. So her Mars transit,
Is in the 10th.
So say that again.
In her 10th house.
It's in her 10th house.
Looking down at the fourth.
Yes, it's debilitating her 10th house just a little, but not horribly. But what I did notice was her Swa Mars, her natal Swa Mars, that Swa meaning it's in its own sign. It's very strong, overly strong in a way. So her 7th house is very strong Mars. And that transit that started 6 days ago has weakened her 7th house, where she's run into so many hiccups with this. With her romance life. I won't go into the details because it's private, but her romantic life has taken, I mean, it's been drama. Really bad. Yes. And that's what debilitated her natal Mars. So it affected her natal Mars. That's, yeah. So that's what the transit did, just this recent transit. I mean, we have so many stories we could tell about all the transits and the eclipses and all that, but I think that it gives everybody an overview, like a broad stroke of.
Yeah, I think that was a great conversation, and I enjoyed hearing about your recent transits and how they're playing out in your life. I find it fascinating.
Don't you? I do too. I'm never going to stop being fascinated by this system. I'm just going to show everybody real quickly. Here is the manual that you will be receiving if you want to join the course. And here is the table of contents. We're going to go from the very beginning, nuts and bolts, foundation, Jyotish defined, and the limbs of Jyotish and how to read a Vedic astrology chart. You'll be given your own chart. I'd like you to also get your family's charts. So when you're taking this class, you'll be able to see your children and your beloveds at the same time. And I'll give you a link to get those charts, but I can send you your own natal chart, but there'll be a link for as many charts as you want, a free link to get however many you want. But I do think this is the best way to learn Jyotish, is to have all your main players, all your people on the desk when you're learning, so you can apply it directly to people, and then it becomes yours. Then it becomes personal, and it's not just, concepts and theories being thrown at you. You can apply it to, oh, my daughter has that alignment. Oh my God, my husband, he's got the Mahalakshmi yoga. No wonder he's So that's how I learned it, and I brought it home. I brought it to, my family. When Penny was teaching, I just always looked at everybody's chart, not just my own. And then we're going to learn about the 4 elements of astrology and all about the signs, the houses, and the planets. We'll learn about which planets are enemies, which ones are friends, debilitations, exaggerations. We're going to go over that. And we're going to do a lot of Ayurveda as well. So I'll be talking about the doshas, which dosha is a Sanskrit word meaning imbalance in each planet. So each planet has an affiliation with a dosha, vata, pitta, or kapha, or the 5 great elements, if you want to call it that. So the 5 great elements, earth, water, ether, and air, we'll be talking a lot about that, and how much of the 5 great elements you were born with, and what is the proclivity for your way of going out of balance. Do you go out of balance with swelling? Do you go out of balance with red skin and inflammation? So you'll be able to find out a lot about your own body. And if you are an Ayurvedic practitioner, this would be a great adjunct for you. And by the end of the 8 weeks, this will be about self-discovery. You'll have understood your family and yourself and your physiology and even your emotional body much better than when you first started. You can use this knowledge for yourself and for clients, but this 8-week clients of whatever, if you're a nurse, you're a practitioner of acupuncture or a yoga teacher, whatever it is, this can help you. However, in 8 weeks, you aren't going to be considered or dubbed in as a professional astrologer. This is more of a introductory course, but it's still very, very helpful. And if you want to go on to actually become an astrologer, then we'll have advanced courses after that. So if you want to sign up, go to my website right here. So here it is. And there you go. So it's KarynChabot.com. And you just go to learn. And it takes you to this page. You can see the book right here, that what we are basing our lessons on. This is Hartefeu's book. He's our lineage, our teacher, that Penny was a student of, and he's one of the best. And then you can click right here, buy now and sign up. It's $380 for the exchange. And like I said, Kristy will be doing some guest teaching, and just read the website. Just go scroll all the way down and get familiar with it and see if it feels comfortable to you. And if not this time, then maybe next year, because I'm going to teach this, I hope, once per year for 8 weeks. All right. Do you think you have anything else you want to add in, Kristy?
No, I think we covered so much about the benefits of astrology, and that was fun.
That was fun. Thanks for doing this with me.